Let's move on to our fourth main topic today. And our fourth and final main topic today gets submitted into us by Ben Attwell, who writes, when responding to a question on the Recode Media podcast regarding the Snyder Cut, the chairman of WarnerMedia and the head of HBO Max, by the way, Bob Greenblatt, stated it is wildly expensive. And I wish it was $30 million. When discussing the cost to complete Snyder's version, this leads me to believe that the cost will be more than 20 to 30 million as stated in the Hollywood Reporter article. What are your thoughts on the statement? All right, thanks a lot for sending this in, man. And listen, I'll remind you, for you guys who watch the show regular, the other day, and Rob, you remember this, I brought up on the show, and I didn't make it a main video. I didn't make a video out of it. I didn't put it in the headline because I honestly didn't know how seriously to take it. But I told you the other day, Rob, on this show, that I got contacted by one of the guys who initially told me years ago that Ben Affleck was out as Batman. And what they told me was that Snyder, when the conversations had started and you know, they asked Snyder, how much is it going to cost? Would it cost to do this? Snyder said to them, 70 million is what it would cost to finish it. And then, of course, they went with 20 to 30. That's in the article. Well, that apparently isn't true. And it may be what I was told was closer to the truth. But anyway, here's the article that comes to us from the folks over at IndieWire who write the following. This is coming from Greenblatt again, who is the chairman of WarnerMedia. He's the head honcho there and the head of HBO Max. And he said this: it isn't as easy as going into the vault and there's a Snyder cut sitting there to put out, Greenblatt said. It does not exist. Zack is actually building it, and it's complex, including new visual effects shots. It's a radical rethinking of that movie, and it's complicated and wildly expensive. I'll just say, I wish it was just $30 million and stop there. It's an enormous undertaking and very complex. Let's read that again. It isn't as easy as going into the vault and there's a Snyder cut waiting to put out. It does not exist. Zack is actually building it, and it's complex. It's including new visual effects shots. It's a radical rethinking of that movie, and it's complicated and wildly expensive. I'll just say I wish it was just $30 million, and I'll stop there. It's an enormous undertaking and very complex. So, Rob, I mean, there's a couple things to unpack in that. I think it's fair to say there's a couple things to unpack in that. The first thing, again, is this reaffirms the sense that regardless of what all these people said for years and years and years, that nope, a completed Snyder Cut version is just sitting there waiting to be put out and Warner Brothers is holding it down. That didn't exist. It didn't exist. And Rob, as you said on this show, you thought it was going to be a lot, and I suspected as well, but you came right out and you said it was going to be a lot more expensive than that. Because it was a very, very unfinished piece. And of course, again, this goes back. This is exactly what I've been saying the whole time. As people were yelling and proclaiming and insisting that there was a finished Snyder Cut version. And I kept saying, no, there is an edit of the movie, but there is no completed version. Rob, just for fun, one of our viewers actually sent this to me to remind me about this. I'm going to show a quick 40-second clip here. I'm keeping it really short. This was the very, very first time I ever addressed the Snyder Cut thing. This is back in 2017. And this was the very, very first time I ever addressed the Snyder Cut thing at all. And this is what I said at the time. This is what I said all the way through. Take a look at what, let's jump back in time to August of 2017, John Campea. This is what I said about the Snyder Cut the very first time we talked about it. The other thing is this, and this is a big one. There seems to be this assumption in the petition that a completed, finished Zack Snyder cut of Justice League exists. It does not. I'm going to tell you right now, it does not. But if you think Justice League was then done 6 months ago, I hate to break it to you, but no, it wasn't. There was a cut, but that wasn't Zack Snyder's definitive vision. Look, never say never. It's possible, I guess. But the amount of money that Warner Brothers would have to put into it to create a Zack Snyder cut, I just don't think it's financially viable for them to do it. That sums up every position I've had, right from the very first time. There's an edit, but it is not a completed film. And Rob, oh my God, every time I would say on social media or on my show, hey guys, there's an edit of the film, but a completed version, that doesn't exist. Holy because I showed you a lot of it. The floods of, yes, it is finished. Zack Snyder finished it. I'd say, no, there's a cut, there's an edit, but it's not a completed film. And people would just insist. I also insisted that, there was an edit. There was not a complete version, doesn't it? But the part that I consistently got wrong, even 6 months ago when I started saying, you know what, I think they'll release it on HBO Max. Even then, the part I got wrong, and I wanted to make sure I had included it in that clip, because I've been saying this consistently too, and this is the part I got wrong. I thought it was going to be way more expensive than people thought, which of course people then respect. It doesn't cost anything because it's finished. I constantly said, and I was wrong about this, I constantly said, listen, this thing's going to be so expensive, I just can't see Warner Brothers spending the money that it would cost to put it out. Now, granted, at the time I was talking about theatrically, and Deborah Snyder said it never would have come out theatrically, but even when I said I thought it would come out on HBO Max, I didn't think they would put another dollar into it, Rob, and you always said they would. You said, we agreed on every other part, but I said, I think they'll put it on HBO Max, but I don't think they're going to spend another dollar on it. Too much money. They're not going to spend another dollar on it. That was my position, and I was wrong. And you said practically the whole time, you know what? I think they will spend the money on it. And here they are. They're spending the money on it. Rob, it's funny because, when you're the chairman, you don't have to follow anybody else's rules. You don't have to read the internal memos that go out to the company. You don't have to, everybody else is saying, okay, guys, tell everybody it's only costing $20 to $30 million. You and I said, that doesn't seem like, if it is as incomplete as that Hollywood Reporter article made it sound in their interview with Zack and Deborah Snyder, because they made it sound like it was damn incomplete. You know, I both went, can you do it for $30 million? And apparently, no. And the chairman is saying, yeah, that's nice. I wish it was only going to cost me $30 million. But again, that's a good thing, Rob, because my concern when they said the $20 to $30 million number, my concern was, is that enough to do it right? And I just thought, if you're going to put the money into it, which I never thought they would, if you're going to put the money into it, you might as well put the amount of money into it to make it right. And it sounds to me that the chairman is saying, okay, yeah, somebody beneath me thinks we need to toe a PR line about $20 to $30 million. Yeah, I wish it was going to cost me $20 to $30 million. Rob, you hear this comment and this quote from this chairman of WarnerMedia. What's your first reaction to it, and how do you interpret it? How do you think this is going to apply to the overall situation?
Well, just like you said, it was everything that we'd said. And then another thing that I had been saying, which he also addressed, is that there are guild rules, SAG, IATSE, the DGA, the WGA, and he flat out talks about that we have a lot of wrangling to do with everyone, including the cast. They've made a movie. So this is essentially something brand new. Do they get paid again? And it's not a question of, people don't know. Here's the frustrating thing, John. When we were talking about this movie, and respectfully, all of the fans who worked hard to see this happen, who supported this campaign, a lot of them just really don't understand how movies are made. Now, I get it. People are like, I do. I understand. No, you really don't. John, you work in visual effects, so you understand how that works. And when we were talking about things, I wasn't, and I don't think you were ever trying to say to people, there isn't a Snyder cut, but there is a process that how movies are made. And it's anybody that's ever worked in the business in any capacity understands that. I'm an editor and a post supervisor. So it's not like a cut didn't exist. There's always some kind of a cut when you're working in post. Whether that cut's ready to be seen or not on a movie like this, if it's done, you would know it. And this was never close to ever being done. You could even have a locked picture cut, because on visual effects heavy movies, you sometimes do, and you turn over the visual effects and you have to wait a year till they're done. But this wasn't even there yet. And so to hear all of the things that they need and the fact that they need money. I mean, I don't think it's a vindication for what we've been saying, because that's, we were just speculating about how things work. But it's nice to finally have real concrete information out there about what this thing actually is, how much it's going to cost, and what it's going to take to finish. Now, I'm fascinated by this. I'm really excited to see this one, but I really want to know from an industry watcher and somebody that's been involved and loves the entertainment business, I want to know how they're going to wrangle all of this. This is a really interesting story to me from a production standpoint. How did they go back to the guilds? How did they talk to the managers and the agents and the lawyers of all of the actors that were involved? How did they do all these visual effects? How did they go back in and recut all this stuff? I really want to know. I hope somebody does. I hope HBO does a Mandalorian-style documentary series about how this all comes together, because from an industry standpoint and from a production standpoint, it's really fascinating to me that this is happening and how it's going to happen. And I think there's a lesson to be learned here, and many lessons actually, and I'd like to learn them.
I think one of the interesting things here too, going back to what I was saying earlier about how the fact that I never thought Warner Brothers would put another dollar into it, because I felt, and I still feel, that they could have taken this edit, this, whether you want to call it a first edit, a Jones edit, whether you want to call it an assembly cut, whatever you want to call it, this incompleted film. I thought they could have taken it as is and put it on HBO Max, and I thought it would have made a lot of people happy. I thought that alone would have made a lot of people happy. I gotta say, and I never thought they would have done it, but I gotta say, it really impresses me that Warner Brothers would not only chip in a few shekels to say, well, tidy it up a little bit, which is what 20 to 30 million would have been, would tidy it up a bit. This comment from Greenblatt really says to me that they're going to take care with it. They're going to take care. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be great. And listen, Zack Snyder made Man of Steel one of the greatest comic book movies of all time, and half the people still hated it. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that don't like this, and that's fine. But considering the fact that I think they just could have taken it as is and dropped it on HBO with green screen and wires and all that kind of stuff, and the green balls on the stick that represents the CGI characters, I think they could have done that and it would have pleased a lot of people, just that they would put it out. The fact that they have gone beyond what I think they needed to do, I think that says a lot about them, that once they made the decision to put out, you know what, if we're going to do it, screw it. I don't want to spend that much money. It sounds like the chairman is saying, I don't want to spend that much money, but if we're going to do it, F it, do it right. And I got to say I'm impressed. I got to say I'm impressed, because I never thought they would put a single dollar more into this process. And here they are, going well above and beyond what they even needed to do.
Well, what I'm still, I can't believe is that from a business standpoint, they finished a Justice League movie. So in terms of all the contracts, in terms of money, the book was closed. The fact that it lost money, all that, whatever you want to call it, the book was closed. So from an industry standpoint, a legal standpoint, and a monetary standpoint, a Snyder cut, because even if they had released it, like you said, and didn't put any more money into it, it's still an additional thing that's being put out as programming, which means somebody has to be remunerated for their participation. Right. Zack Snyder certainly does. The actors would have to be. There's a lot of, and even if they just threw it up the way it was, it's a whole new thing, because from a business standpoint, the book was shut, and you can't just throw this out there without renegotiating contracts or talking to people, because as we know, it ain't show friends, it's show business. And people would just, the cast especially, the representation would come out and go, you can't do that. You've already made Justice League. It exists. This whole thing, what, you're gonna tread on my clients? You're gonna put something else out that they've already been paid for? You can't do that. It violates union rules. It violates business rules. So from that, and fans never talk about that aspect of this. They only talk about a cut exists and put out Zach's cut. Well, there's also legalities, and there's also things that have nothing to do with Zack Snyder that have to do with the realities for a motion picture studio from a business standpoint to do this, and no one ever talks about that. And he, in this podcast, directly addressed it, and I am fascinated by what that's going to be and what that's going to take and how many negotiations they've had to make. It's going to be, I mean, it's a real feat to do this. This is not something that is being done lightly. They are the studios putting everything they have behind it, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, which again then makes the release date of 2021 make a lot more sense, because a lot of people are like, why wait till 2021? Well, now it's kind of obvious. So again, to me, I think this is a very telling interview, a very telling comment. It's not often you get the actual head chairman of the company to come out and make statements like that. And again, my main takeaway from it again is I got to say I'm impressed. I thought what they would have done and what they could have done was just thrown that group of fans a bone by just putting out the unreleased version, the unfinished version, I should say. I thought they could have just done that. I thought that's what they would have done. And instead, they're going the extra mile. And I got to say, bravo to HBO Max, bravo to WarnerMedia, bravo to Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
I got to say, I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed. And I never thought they'd do that. I never did.
You know, John, what's really interesting to me is they figured all these things out. Like, remember, they talked about Toby Emmerich back in November of 2019, first opening the door to doing this. So that was over 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So they have been dealing with the legalities, and they've been going through. I mean, that's why he addresses that in the podcast as well. They've already been doing all of this groundwork over the last 6 months. So this has been an ongoing process, and they only announced it when all of these things were surmounted. So that's even more impressive from the studio side of it all and from the business side of it all, that they've had to go back and look into getting all of this done, because that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Guys, question is, what do you think about the growing but impressive expenses that it's going to do to cost and get this thing put to screen? Jump on down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.